Why don't you guys all come up again and we'll, so Masao and Dan, and let's open the floor for questions or comments. Although it should be painfully obvious, right to you, Ben, in a second. Most of the group spent the beginning part of their work reading all of the input from the community and discussing it. And so that was the very first phase of this. And now they're in the second phase of digesting that and working on the trade space and interacting some more with the community. Chris, it's good you mentioned that the forum is still active there. I think that's true. They all want to hear from you, either about new ideas or things that have come up, and they are understanding the white papers, the science pitches. They are understanding the requirements of the mission, and they are also updating the surveys with respect to changes in the performance of Roman. As Julie was talking about the other day, there have been changes. We have a new filter. There have been changes in the slew and settle time. All of that gets folded into the new, the definition of the surveys that these guys are all working on. So, okay, let's open it up for questions. Ben, it was you first.
So Chris, thanks for mentioning sampling. For the more time domain focused surveys, the Bulge and the High Latitude, yeah, there was no mention of dither or jitter. And you know, if you're looking for transients, uniform sampling is good in time, but for variables, you really want to sample a wide range of frequencies. So are the surveys going to be very regular, or are you expecting there to be, I mean, to focus on one thing, time jitter?
Yeah. So we received several white papers related to time domain aspects of the high latitude wide area survey, those are definitely going to be elements of the the proposal. I think the main thing from time domain that would have affected our trade space is things like or that interact in the most complicated way with our trade space has been discussion of things like proper motions, where you really do need some very widely separated epochs. There are other aspects of it as well that have come up in solar system or variability of objects. So that will be part of our science assessment. And as for sampling for the other surveys,
yeah, so we've had some discussions of this. There wasn't a lot in the community input that was strongly arguing for not regular cadence in the Bulge, for example. It's 15 minutes or so. There were some arguments for not having it very, very strictly periodic. So some randomness to the sampling, helping some science cases that helps with aliasing or disentangling some frequencies from others. But I think some of the discussions we had yesterday, actually, in terms of the randomness, it was a fairly small change to the cadence. So rather than doing 15 minutes, 12 minutes, 10 minutes, so like a very small delta to the 15-minute cadence would address whatever that science case was trying to achieve. I think it was basically aliasing in short period white dwarf binaries. So I guess the short answer is that we have discussed it. I think currently it's not an option that the Bulge survey at least is strongly considering, is to inject some kind of randomness into the cadence and stick to something that's somewhat regular but not very strictly periodic. And I think that's just basically how Roman will operate. It will not be very, very strictly periodic.
I can comment on the high latitude time domain survey. So the supernova reference survey has a strict 5-day cadence. But that's not really a requirement for the supernova science. As long as we have, on average, a 5-day cadence and avoid big gaps, the supernova science will be fine. We did get a lot of input from the AGN community who want a logarithmically spaced delta t. So from minutes to weeks. And so we're trying to see if we can accommodate that without hurting the supernova science.
I guess one more thing I will add is the off-season observations for the bulge survey will by construction also not be very periodic. I think in terms of just the logistics of going back to the bulge fields in the off seasons, once a day or something, that there will be some randomness just because of other things that Roman does during the same time. So that will automatically happen.
Sorry, and just one quick comment. When you're looking at the time domain and you're tiling and then you come back and rotate, for time domain you do have to trim the edges of the SEAs because there's always some bright thing right off the side of the chip. So you do want to take into account those gaps in the roll, and it gets very complicated.
Absolutely,
But
yeah.
it's not just the chip gap, it's the chip gap plus a pad.
Right, right.
There's a question in the back, Skylar. It's exercise time. Should I just stay here for basketball exercise? This is the best part of Skylar's day.
Thanks for the great updates. It's Jesse Hahn from Harvard asking a question. For the high latitude wide area survey, I noticed for the white strategy there was a dash dash, then 2,000 square degrees. I was just curious, what's the maximum square degrees the committee is seriously considering? I mean, of course, the upper bound is 42.
Yeah. So the sort of faster mode that the committee is looking at now would be sort of one pass over the sky in H-band instead of the two at different roll angles, which were the reference strategy. One could envision that as like as like a getting an initial epoch also for proper motions and things like that. That mode, as we're looking at it, would do about 1,400 square degrees per month. So getting a few months of that is out of a 505-day allocation is certainly reasonable. Getting much more than 6 months, getting over 10,000 square degrees would be kind of a real stretch unless we get an increase in our allocation.
Great, thank you.
Mark Pinson, Ohio State. This is really interesting stuff. I think one of the questions I have is there's a lot of kind of, we're considering many options, but there are reports coming due in November, right? So that means that there has to be a window where you're kind of freezing things out. And something that would be tremendously helpful from our angle, I'm doing astroseismology and the Galactic Bulge Time Domain Survey, is there going to be a place where the surveys in general are going to say, we are considering options A, B, C, D, and people can give feedback on the virtues and strengths of specific options as opposed to kind of general things, because I can visualize our being able to simulate, populations if we have a few distinct choices. If we just have general things to do, it's much harder to give useful, specific feedback. And so one question is that actually being something that you're considering for these surveys?
I can comment on that. So I think we will present several scenarios, but they're not going to vary widely. The scenarios are going to be nominal, pessimistic, and optimistic, or something like that, at least for the time domain survey. It won't be, 1-day cadence versus 10-day cadence. It's not going to be that different. But yes, we will have a range of options, a range of strategies. Yeah.
Yeah, so for high latitude wide area survey, our thinking had been that community update in August would be an opportunity to do just that, to present a smallish number of options that can go for definite evaluation, and that's both for the community as a whole, but also for the pits, the SOC, the project, to let us know if there are specific issues that any of those raise from their points of view.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree. I think our mind is the same. Jesse, if she's still here, can chime in if I say something wrong. But I mean, now is the time to comment, I guess, for us. So part of what we talked about today are strategies. Of course, they're not recipes. I showed some version of what a nominal survey could look like. And of course, there could be 10 different versions you could make. But I think now is the time to give feedback on certain ideas that we're considering. If people think those are good, people strongly feel those are bad, now is the time to let us know, because some version of what we presented today, and we will present at the next community forum, will likely go into the survey definitions. So even though there's not a menu yet, I guess, in terms of surveys of how they look like, I think now we do have a sort of menu of ideas that we're considering. And so if some of these are appealing or not, that's good. That would be good to know, even though it's not necessarily a choice between surveys.
Okay, there's a question specifically for Dan Hooper from Jennifer Yee on Slack. Have you considered decreasing the narrowband filter observations, for example, to 1 per day? For example, for very small FFPs, if the normal observations are interrupted with a narrowband observation, that observation is lost, possibly pushing the planet below the detection threshold, which is 6 observations.
So the question, if I understand correctly, is the question is, have we considered increasing, so having longer, so I said 3 to 12 hours, but we could actually make it longer to have the narrowband observations. Is Matt here, Matthew Penny? Yes, where? Maybe we can hand him the mic. So I guess to answer it, we have not considered that. I think it was most of the suggestions we got from the community was to increase the cadence, so faster narrowband observations. But I see Dave Bennett has his hand up, and I think Matt is probably more.
I wasn't listening to the question.
I think I'll read it out and correct me if I'm wrong. But I think Jennifer's question was: have we considered slower observations with the narrowband filter rather than more rapid ones? Or maybe we can repeat the question if I'm misinterpreting it.
Yeah, so I can essentially no. So we need a specific cadence on the narrowband filter in order to capture color measurements of microlensing events. And 12 hours maybe you could slow it down, but we're doing it. We want to do it in a blue filter, and we're looking in relatively reddened fields, and so you really start to lose signal to noise if you reduce that cadence. Whereas if you want to get those measurements for the short hits microlensing events, then you need to do that at a higher cadence than the 12 hours that we've considered. So 12 hours is the upper limit we've considered, and we were thinking, but we'd want to go significantly faster than that.
So there's a context here that I think people are missing, is that in the paper that includes Jennifer that's suggesting to reduce the cadence of the narrow filter observations, it's based on Matthew's original simulations where he tried to get the same signal to noise per observation with the narrower filters, which meant very long exposures, which then increased the gap that Jennifer is worried about. So I think the current plan is probably more like not changing the exposure time, in which case presumably the effect is, is less damaging to the free-floating planet site.
Anybody else have any comments or questions or? Yeah.
Thanks, Josh Leader, NASA Goddard. I have a question about the idea of doing GRISM spectroscopy in the galactic bulge time domain survey fields. In your tentative plan or the trade space you're considering, it said one GRISM observation. Does that one GRISM observation include some different roll angles for trying to disentangle all the blending, or is it really just one shot at one roll angle?
Yeah, that's, we have not considered the practicalities of doing this in a lot of detail. That's a good idea. We should probably consider this. Lee has he's very supportive of the idea. Yes, of course. So we have of course considered the fact that there will be confusion if we do GRISM spectroscopy in the bulge fields, and I mean at minimum I think the idea is that if it's low cost, why not do it? You get extra spectral information, even for some sources perhaps where the confusion might not be that bad. But yes, we could do something smarter than this to actually take care of the confusion for fainter sources, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, it's one scientist's opinion, but I'm very much in favor of it. And if there's a way to, add a little bit of time and get more out of it, that might be worth considering.
That was the general sense of the committee as well. So it was actually, so this was a suggestion that came out of the committee discussions, in fact. Hans Walterix at MPIA came up with it, and we were all convinced that it's a good thing to do, although we haven't worked out the plans yet.
Another comment on that is we took some extremely bright source data through the GRISM and TVAC testing, and a very bright star through the GRISM impacts a lot of the detector where that star lives, and some of the adjacent ones with a lot of additional light through the many orders of the GRISM.
Yeah.
And so that might be something also to consider, is how long you want to integrate crowded fields to try to avoid sort of swamping half the focal plane with a bright GRISM source. But we can talk more about that.
Absolutely.
We haven't shared those results because we're still looking at them.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's great to see. Yeah, for sure. Thanks.
They're definitely talking about, I think the idea now is to, let the science drive it and then make the case for it and then come back and say, okay, if we really want to do this, how should we do it smart? Yeah, how can we do it smart so that we get what we want out? That was the only thing.
Hey, this is Robbie Wilson from NASA Goddard. So I have a question for the wide area survey. So under the assumption that the timing of the observations is less important than the time domain, are you going to be constrained in your observations by the astrophysics, the general observer programs, or vice versa?
And I think the answer could be either in principle. Especially if we start considering fields closer to the ecliptic, then we start to get a few narrowish windows in which those fields are available at not horribly bright Zodi background. Fortunately, the times of year we need are not the same, or have relatively low overlap with the times of year that the Galactic Bulge Survey is going to need. But it is, it is going to have to be a point of negotiation, because we've received nominal allocations from the project, right? But we haven't been told your nominal allocations is 12 days of June and 11 days of July and things like that. I imagine that that's the part of the next round of negotiations. But if someone from the project wants to take that,
Julie.
Well, I mean, I'll just comment that it's very hard to figure out how to resolve conflicts between these set of core community surveys and a set of general astrophysics surveys that haven't been proposed yet. So I think there is necessarily going to need to be some sort of an iterative process after we know what general astrophysics surveys are coming in. Because I think we wouldn't arrive at the right optimization if we tried to you have 12 days in June and 13 days in July, and that allows an allocation of time for general astrophysics surveys that might not match what are actually selected in the program. I do want to comment, though, that the general astrophysics surveys don't have lower priority than the core community surveys in the sense that we will be looking for global optimization and not sort of placing a core community survey somewhere and not moving it just because it was already scheduled. Apart from time-dependent things, obviously the galactic bulge can't happen at times where the bulge isn't visible.
Yeah, but thank you. Yeah, because we have not at this time been given instruction that we should try to choose certain months, and that could get very complicated.
To see that you're all going to be here. You have various schedules of meetings which are open, and people are going to be around. I think Dan, you said that you're going to have sort of an open lunch open house and stuff.
Yep. So tomorrow. So I guess all of us had it up, but maybe we can do another reminder. So tomorrow, lunch break. Jesse Christensen will lead sort of office hour, so you can come see her and other committee members that are there to give any feedback. But of course, you can do that at any time. So both me and Jesse will be around this week, so you can grab us at any time to give you feedback. But I guess in the vein of what Mark mentioned before, the time is tight. November is not far away. So if you do have feedback, especially if you feel strongly about some of the things that you heard today, I think Jesse and I would agree that it would be good to hear those sooner than later. So.
No, we actually didn't think about it, so maybe we should do something. You can just grab us, yeah. Or coffee break if you see Chris and I standing around and you have something to say, don't be shy. I want to meet you too, so.
Yeah, we have multiple sessions on Wednesday and Thursday. I can send that out to one of the organizers, and can go into an email, because I'm sure you didn't write down.
For whichever ones were open, and you're happy to have people go.
They're all open.
They're all open.
Yes.
Right? So
Oh, I can put it on the Slack channel. Okay.
Oh yeah. Okay.
I'll do that.
So yeah, just one more thing before we break, because I think we might have another announcement about tomorrow. But we wanted to do this on the first day. There's a lot to think about. Just for you to see, meet the people, know they're here, and encourage you to talk to them this week. This is a great opportunity to ask more questions. You've got the whole rest of the conference, but in case you hear something comes up, please reach out to them. They will be here, and that's why we wanted to do this on the first day, even though we haven't really touched on